Welcome to Healing Beyond the Trauma. My name is Megan Alves. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. And this podcast, I want to break the stigma around mental health and have real, unfiltered conversations about healing. Some stories are going to be raw, even triggering at times, but they're real and they're honest because healing starts with honesty. If you've ever felt overwhelmed, stuck, or like you're carrying it all, you're not. Here, you're going to gain validation, practical tools, and a new perspective to move forward. Because healing isn't about erasing the past. It's about reclaiming your future. So let's dive in. Hey, and welcome back to another episode. I am really excited to introduce to an amazing human in our community. We actually probably have quite a few paths in our lives cross, so maybe we'll get to that. We'll see. I mean, I would like to talk more about Teresa Sands today and just what she is doing in our community and the path that she has walked to be where she's at today. Welcome, Teresa, and thank you so much for coming on today.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Megan. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about what you're up to and then let's dive into how you got to where you are today doing the work that you're doing in
Yeah,
our community.
of course. Yeah. All the things. So, I'm a person, first and foremost, who is in recovery from a problematic relationship with substances. I have now been abstinent from my substance of choice and from alcohol for now going on almost 6 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. So, first
Yeah.
and foremost, and we'll get a little bit more into all the
Yeah.
things prior. Yeah.
Right. And so before we jump into that, what was your substance of choice?
So for mine, it was definitely heroin and opioids. I got lucky. I would say lucky is a interesting word, but before really the fentanyl epidemic, right before it was more of like 2006, 2007, when Oxy 80s were really prevalent. We had the Purdue Pharma situation, and that's really where I had a lot of my intense years. And I had a lot of people really close to me pass away, which definitely did not help, with me and trying to overcome grief and loss. And I would say that I definitely have a pattern of trying to make people home, and that never ends well. So I think that's really,
Yeah. And I
yeah,
think that that's just to highlight on that. You mentioned to make people home.
yeah,
And so tell us what that means for you in your relationships, especially when drugs were prevalent in
yeah.
your life.
So I would say early on, I think it was definitely a history of abandonment, neglect from, I would say my basic human needs were met, food, shelter, water when I was younger, but that emotional need was not always there for me, especially I would find it in other people. So I'd find it in partners or in friendships, and I would make them my everything. And then if that fell apart, or even worse, if they ended up overdosing and passing away, then I would just lost my identity. I spent when I was in high school, I had my high school sweetheart who was absolutely obsessed with him. He actually overdosed during the opioid pandemic, and that definitely contributed to a complete spiral. I was suicidal for many, many years. I mean, to the point I would wake up in the cemetery after attempting an OD on his gravestone, and like definitely went through, I want to say, a good decade of complete grief, but not having the environmental or emotional support network to really be like, hey, I think you need some professional help right now. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really that idea of you don't know what you don't know, and you were just trying to do the best that you could in a situation of severe grief. And I know that we first said, let's talk about what you're doing, but I think I don't want to skip over such a pivotal moment in your life, and that is during these high school years. You mentioned that your partner was give us some insight because I know a little bit, but really fill us in. I mean, the drug started for you pretty young.
Yeah.
And then this partner, what was his name again?
His name was Casey.
Casey.
Yeah.
How young were you guys
Yeah.
when all of this happened?
Well, thank you for asking his name. I really appreciate you wanting to humanize him. So I really appreciate
Yeah.
that a lot. Thank you.
Yeah.
But
His story is
definitely,
important to hear,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, and I want to make a connection between why I advocate so much for overdose prevention. And this is where that story originates from, because
Right.
let's see, he was getting ready to turn 21 because I remember that we had an argument over him having his birthday at Blondie's, which used to be a wonderful little bar out here in Las Vegas, and I wasn't going to
Yeah.
be able to go and yada yada. So I remember that
Because
conversation.
you weren't 21 yet,
Wasn't
right?
21 yet. Yeah, I think I
Yeah.
was maybe 19, 20. So I had just
Okay.
completed high school, but we were together during our senior year. So kind of like trickled on. And I was actually a student at UNLV when he ended up passing away, which is why I ended up dropping out of college at that time and everything and
Right.
continue on. But yeah, um, it was a lot of not knowing what you don't know, especially at that age, not knowing what the signs of an overdose are, not knowing what problematic relationships and dependence to substances looks like. I knew that um, always had pills on him. I knew that I was taking pills with him. I knew that, he would spend hours at a time not answering his phone because he was out trying to score, whatever that looked like. And so I kind of had an idea of what was going on, but really understanding the gravity of the situation was so far over my head at that age.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. And so just that period of even dating somebody, oftentimes we hear, our young people say that they know this person and they know, they've been with this person for an extended period of time. And sometimes I've heard, for a month, 2 months, 6 months, right, that they know this person so deeply. But you just said something really important that you were together with this person. You guys would take some of these pills together, but the extent of where he was at within that relationship with the pills was way over your head to understand.
completely withdraw. Like I knew that there was periods where I started to not feel good, but I didn't know why. I just thought that I had the
Mhm.
flu. I mean, like you really don't know what you don't know, right? And that's why education is so important. So he was such a good human and such a good person and like had all the friends in the world and like just one of those souls that when they walk in a room you're so gravitated to and had such a huge personality. But really I noticed that people that have these dependencies usually are the person who feels the most, right? Who
Right.
has people flock to them, that has that gravitational just pull to them.
Yeah, and I mean, even the research is starting to come out even more so in the clinical field saying, keep an eye on those high achievers. Keep an eye on the person who are the go-to people in their friends group, the energetic one, the more outgoing one. Those are the kiddos to keep an eye on. And because the research is really starting to show us that the pressure of being in that capacity for so many people is not an easy task in youth. And so knowing that he was that person, was when you went through and that's a long time. I'm so glad that you got out of the fact that a decade of battling through that grief, but not knowing how to ride those waves of grief and walk through those waves of grief. Tell us a little bit about what that looked like. And you said education is key. And so can you give us some highlights as you tell us how you got through that decade, but what you now know? If somebody was listening, can you give us those little tidbits of if I was to input this and share this part with you, this is what I want you to hear. Can you give us some of that education?
Yeah. I think, well, I say this with a grain of salt. There's so much freedom, for lack of better word, when you do not think that there's going to be tomorrow. Right. So, like, when you're going through and you are truly having suicidal ideations or you're actively trying to end your own life, but like you're unsuccessful day after day after day for whatever reason, whether that's divine intervention or otherwise, there's such a
Right.
freedom also in that of not really caring, obviously, about what tomorrow looks like, about hitting those milestones, about completing school, about because you're like, I'm not going to be here tomorrow. So what's the point? I was so into this, I call it a darkness, and I feel like it really was almost like just this possession. I was so deep into this grief and the substance use and self-medicating after he had passed away. I want to kind of backtrack just a little and kind of just give you a synopsis of what ended up happening with Casey. One day he didn't answer his phone, which was unusual because we were always together. Like I was like glued to his side, completely enmeshed, right? In the most beautiful of ways.
Yeah.
And he finally answers and I was like, I'm really upset with you. You blew me off. And he's like, listen, I don't feel good. I just pulled up to my cul-de-sac. He had like a gate. He lived in a really beautiful community. He's like, "I pulled up to my gate and I threw up. I don't feel good. I need you to come over." And I was like, "No." I was like, "Absolutely not. I'm so mad at you." Like, in my youth,
19-year-old mind.
I'm
Yeah.
just
We're self-absorbed at that
yeah.
time.
I was like, "Why would you
Yeah.
do this? One day you're gonna not be here anymore, blah, blah, blah." I was so upset just simply because he blew me off. He was like, "I really need you to come over." And I said, "No." And then the next morning, early in the hours, I got a call from his brother saying he's no longer with us. He passed away. With that guilt in me at that time feeling like that was my fault, it launched that decade of just pure self-demise, self-mutilation, like loathing. And like, don't get me wrong, my father did everything he could to give me the best life possible. It was just me and him for the majority of my life. I did have a stepmom for a long period of time. We can get into that if we have the capacity and the time, but he
Yeah.
did the best he could. He is very Sicilian. He's actually coming out here today to visit me for a week. I'm really excited about it.
That's so
Yeah. He's
exciting.
wonderful. He's a really good man, but he's just very Sicilian and very Sicilian culture. And like, I'm the provider. And, Treese, don't call me with your chaos, pretty
Mm,
much.
yeah.
We've grown a lot in that area, but, like, back then, after Casey's passing, me isolating in my bedroom and not coming out of my room and losing weight and, missing over 30 days of school, shouldn't have graduated, but was a cheerleader, so they let me pass. I mean, like,
Wow.
all the red
There's so many warning
yes,
signs.
all the
Yes.
red flags, like, I should not have graduated high school. My coach did me a solid, at least they thought they did me a solid, right?
Right.
So I was in all the sports and, I remember there was a period where I was using methamphetamines and I did tell my father, and this is, shortly after everything, I said, "Dad, I have a problem and I need help." And the next day he says, "Pack a suitcase." He's going to kill me for sharing this story, but I'm going to share it anyways. He goes, "Pack a
Thanks, Dad, for
suitcase."
letting us share it. It's important.
So I packed the suitcase and he takes me to Disneyland. I think I'm going to rehab and instead I go to Disneyland. And let me tell you what, weighing 95 pounds going through amphetamine withdrawal
Oh,
in Disneyland was not fun. But to
I
him,
cannot even
yeah,
imagine.
to him in his world, he was doing the best he could. And he thought maybe he just needed to spend time with me. Maybe I was missing something. And he did what in that time he felt like was best, right?
Right. Like, let's get you to be a kid
Yeah.
again. Let's
Yeah.
get you to make some memories. For those listening, and if their child comes to them, and Dad, this is no guilt. If you're listening, this is zero because again, we are telling the story that we didn't know what we didn't know. And so for those moving forward in a story similar to this, and their kid is coming to them with all of these red flags, losing weight, isolating, and then finally is brave enough to say, I need help. I'm taking these drugs. What would be some really solid steps for a parent to take to be able to help continue that journey of getting them help?
That's such a good question. And this goes for a parent, this goes for if this is a child coming for help or an adult or anyone else.
Yeah,
You have that conversation without judgment. And I know it's really hard. And I say this and I preach this and I talk to people about these all day long. But then I think about when it comes to my child, when he's coming to me with these questions, am I going to feel the same, right?
right.
Hard as it is, I know when your child's, he's at the age, my son is 10, his name's Epic, he's asking questions about infection and what does cocaine look like and all those things. And I know in those moments when your kid's trying to have these hard conversations, you're thinking, what do I say so I don't mess my kid up for life? Like, what do we do here?
Absolutely.
Like, I do not
Right.
want to cause, adverse childhood experiences because I had this conversation incorrectly. So I totally get it. And I want to preface with that first. I
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure.
A lot of pressure, right? But really, what is needed in that moment, from my perspective, as a person on both sides, is complete autonomy, complete understanding, the response of, I know this conversation is really hard for you. Thank you for trusting me with this. Let's talk about what you need and how I can help you get there.
So you just heard this child, you are ready to listen to this child, and you are able to keep your emotions in check with whatever bias. And yes, this comes from two professionals. By the way, Teresa is going for her licensed clinical social work degree. So she is going through this. And we know even as moms in a professional setting, because not only are you just going through this path, you have worked for amazing organizations and you still do. And we'll definitely make sure to talk about these organizations, helping those to get to recovery and helping to break those stigma around substance use. And so, yes, this comes from a lot of education and a lot of experience. But I say that because the first time, and I'm going to speak for myself, and then you tell me if this is correct or not. But the first time that you supported somebody on the other side of that, going through that, it is nerve-wracking for me. I wasn't sure exactly what to say. I wasn't sure how to say it. I wanted so badly in the beginning to get them the right type of help, and that was coming off of a me urge, right? Like
Mhm.
I want where the more that I practiced it, the more education and conversation, open conversations with those in the professional setting, the more I was able to gain the words and gain the practice to be able to say those types of words in a situation that would send any parent from 0 to 10. Oh my gosh, what do I have to do? I'm not even sure. And the more that you practice it, the better emotion regulation you're going to have and the better you're going to be able to support them in that commenter that you just said in this, kind of role play type conversation. But did you feel like it was the same for you in the beginning?
I mean, when I had that conversation with my child?
Or like when you had, yes, maybe with your child or maybe with, the first people that you started to help
Mhm.
in your journey. Was
Yeah.
it just like natural or was it a little nerve-wracking, right?
So what Megan's talking about is I actually work as an admissions coordinator. So I work as an admissions coordinator for both an adult facility, as well as with adolescents 11 through 17. So I literally am the one who's picking up those calls when it's the family or the client in crisis and they're like, I need help or I'm looking for this or like my mom says this and this. So yes, I actually started my career in this industry on the crisis text line. So during COVID, I was looking for something to keep myself feeling like I was on my healing journey and where I was able to give back. And so I volunteered, and that's where I got a lot of my training to take, people through the 5 stages of conversation and how to identify self harm and how to have them. I mean, I had kids, full disclosure, that were 11, 10 years old and in active self harm while we were on the phone.
Correct.
And like, how do
Yeah,
you get
there's
through that?
unfortunately, we can't put a number on it anymore, and it's
Yeah.
becoming younger and younger in order. And more times than not, the self harm is I don't have another skill to help me with the stress or to help me with whatever that's coming through.
hmm And again, what I learned from that training that I took and from working with them for several years is allowing again for autonomy and asking what they need. And in that moment of being like, hey, can you please put that razor away at least while we're just on the phone right now so we can have a conversation? And 9 times out of 10, they're like, yes, okay, I'm going to put that away. Well, at least we're talking and then we can move on and hopefully get them to a point where there's resources that are tangible, where there's availability for them. Of course, we have those barriers with things like insurances and all the things that we could probably talk about for 6 years. But
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of barriers in mental health and getting the correct resources, but really going back to what we were saying in my long-winded questions today
yes,
because I have 500 of them
same. And I think
apparently.
these are answers. We're just going all over the place, and I love it. It's very organic and authentic. We're just having a conversation.
Yeah, because this topic is so big and your lived experiences are so big and now your journey to being able and I'll say you're with Virtue Recovery
hmm Yep.
and you also help with the sister company with Silver State, which is a youth. And so you said again within those agencies you are helping kiddos around as young as what age?
11.
11 up, yes, up to geriatrics,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And so, as the question that, initially of being asked is like, as you go through this journey, you answered, yes, if there was a way, maybe if dad had the tools, it's like he was doing the best. And I would venture to say, any parent that your kid is coming to you for help, you've opened the door for your child to be able to be open and honest with you. And it really is about just getting the education to be able to listen to them and to show
Mhm.
them autonomy so that you can take them to the next step. And as you've talked about so far, now that, those listening is it's like the next step to the next step to the next step because it's a long journey to get the correct help in the correct way. But there is tons of support for the parent, for the child, for the adult. And so let's go back. You were going through active active use, and when dad took you to Disney, you were actually going through withdrawals,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And so tell us how you got through that and what that path ended up looking like after that.
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna go down a different road here.
Okay.
So, one thing me and my father always had in common was music. He's a musician. He used to be the studio engineer for Las Vegas recording. I grew up in music, so that was always my outlet, was
Amazing.
performance arts. That was really one of the languages that him and I spoke that we both could communicate, was jamming out and performing and talking about music and learning lyrics. And so I was really invested in dance and cheer, and because I was gonna be a superstar. You couldn't tell me
Right?
anything different. I was gonna be
Right.
famous, you know what I mean? So, when I was going through that decade, or maybe even a little bit longer, honestly, of chaotic substance use, and combined with the grief and the suicidal ideations, I really had nothing to lose. And so what I was doing was auditioning, and auditioning for really big things, like traveling the world, shows here in Vegas, and I was booking them despite the chaotic use. And I was booking all these shows. I started performing, and I really immersed myself in for the performance arts. And I continued that on for entertainer for 18 years. Before I ever got a
Amazing.
job in this industry, this was the first actual job I had that wasn't a 1099. You know what I mean? So, like,
Right.
there was when I say there was freedom in that period, I don't mean that as a positive, but yet it allowed me to do things that, like, I wouldn't have normally done because I didn't care. I
Mhm.
didn't care. I didn't think I was gonna make it past 27. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that was really my saving grace at that time, in a way, was being able to express myself through performance art.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you had some path and purpose, which obviously now has turned into something even bigger because you've performed for a long time. I mean, Vegas nightlife, for those of you listening, it is such a beautiful scene of amazing people, but it is if you're in addiction, if you're trying to stay out of the party scene, it is not an easy scene to step back out of.
Mhm.
Honestly, had the motto working in the nightlife industry that it was like you either live Vegas or Vegas is going to live you,
Yeah.
right?
So you know what
Ah,
I'm talking about. You've been there.
yes.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, and really it's you have to have a really good head on your shoulders. But what's interesting is the professional dancers that I worked with in these shows, like, they did not have the chaotic substance use that I had, where, like, they had physical dependency. Yeah, maybe they were using something over on the weekends, or, like, when they went out, but for some reason, well, I won't say for some reason, I know very much what it was, that lack of healing and getting the resources I need and the therapy I needed for what I had went through early in my childhood, and then with and all the other things, it really just snowballed, right? And
Right.
I mean, I was making people a lot of money, and nobody really cared for a long time until I became a liability, and then it was an issue, which is understandable. It's just kind of the way of show business.
Right.
Yeah.
So did somebody start noticing your recklessness within
Yeah.
the substance use?
Yeah, I'd be performing, or I'd show up to gigs, and, I had wounds on my face from picking, or I didn't fit into the costumes, or, I fell. I mean, there was times I was hosting like karaoke nights or hosting events, and I would fall off stage. So, yeah,
Goodness. Yeah.
eventually they're like, "Listen, we love you, but you gotta go." And I was like, my whole identity was wrapped into performing. Like, that was my escape when I was younger from a lot of the abandonment and emotional and even physical abuse with my other parent. And, like, so,
Mm.
and it wasn't even with her per se, it was with who she was with. So I do want to preface that just in case mom is listening to this. I love her also very much. Mom
Thanks, Mom, for letting us
yeah,
tell the
yeah,
story.
but also mom,
Yeah.
has her own mental health struggles, and I think, as we both know, it is genetic as well. There's a lot of this that is genetic,
Yeah.
environmental mixed with genetics. Anyways, I digress. You and I could
No,
probably be on this podcast for, like, a couple days. I don't know how much time you
I
have.
know. Dad, you're welcome on. Mom, you're welcome on. I
Mhm.
mean, I think that
Yeah,
these
yeah.
these conversations, is the whole purpose behind Mental Summit is so that we can have real conversations because oftentimes, I mean, you and I are friends now on social
Mhm.
media, and so this is the way that life is kind of portrayed as these social media realm, like reels and what that looks like. And I would venture to say that very few people, I mean, this was back in the day before a lot of social media, right? let's fast forward to now where if somebody was to stumble upon your page and not get a glimpse of your story, like look at all these amazing experiences that she's had and look at all this beautiful talent, which you do, right? But that didn't come without a cost, that
Oh, yeah.
you walked through that journey. And obviously a lot of loss, unfortunately.
Right.
In the clinical field, we talk a lot about ACEs score. So you kind of touched points on that. And oftentimes it's really important to understand if we've come from a history with high ACEs score, then you're gonna want to get some professional support. There's no need to do it alone. And more times than not, in the clinical field, we often know now that those co-occurring disorders are going to be there because more times than not, people are trying to just cope the best that they can, which is why when I got into the clinical field, there was so much noise around substance, and we're starting to get some bigger noise out there that substance abuse isn't just an active choice that somebody wakes up. I have never met someone from working in a psychiatric hospital to working with children to working in a private practice that told me, Megan, I woke up one morning and I just, wanted to take heroin to fuck up my life. That was never just an active choice. It was in this time I was going through X and I stumbled upon, or somebody handed me, or something started in the low doses. And, Jamie has such a beautiful story there, right? She's like, I just wanted to get through postpartum. And then it just so quickly felt like I blinked my eye. And all of a sudden I was figuring out how to get, whatever it was in order to feel better.
Yeah.
Because if I can function and feel better, then I can live my life better. And so for you, as we talk about this journey, to go back to how did you get to the point that you're like, you know what? This is not the path for me. And what were those steps that you started to take?
My goodness, Megan. Okay. So,
Diving in all
yeah.
the places.
As I got deeper into the show business world and was doing all the things and traveling all the places, and I did have a period where I met my son's father, and we went through our own thing. We both were. I don't want to share his business, but going through our own struggles, we ended up becoming abstinent together. I had my son. Jamie's such an awesome human, by the way. I had to put that in there because we mentioned her.
Yeah.
But like
Yeah.
her, I also, after I had my son, I could not connect with him. I had been, I want to say, abstinent from narcotics and all substances for a couple years prior to having him. And then when I did have him, it was like, where's the Dilaudid, right? So like right away, I had a really traumatic situation after giving birth to him, where like they put me on the lower tabs because of a complicated pregnancy. And I was off and running, right? So it was a spiral again. And all I wanted was to get back on stage. And it took me a lot of self-reflecting to figure out like why I was so adamant of like not wanting to be a mother, but wanting to, I was like a week or two after almost bleeding out while giving birth and back in a show, like with the palette and
Wow.
everything. I mean, like I was so determined to get back on stage. And I realized after healing and doing the work that like when I'm on stage, it's the only time that everything is quiet and that I can feel something and that I can connect with my audience. And that is the feeling I get when I help other people in this industry. And so I've really realized the connection there as I've like been doing the work of, that warm, fuzzy feeling you get on Christmas morning is what I would get on stage. And that's what I get when I'm helping someone. It's that
Oh my
dopamine
gosh.
release.
I
It's like,
love
yeah.
that for you.
But I couldn't find it unless I was performing, unless I felt validated or seen or connected through music or dance. And again, I found a way to do that through service work and to do that through the initiatives I'm doing today and the work that I'm doing today. So it's been like a full circle moment with that. But okay.
Yeah, and we're going to dive into all the things that you are doing because I'm going to make sure to link all those things so people have all the resources that they can start, if they need support. We're going to go to that, and I will make sure to not skip over that
That's okay.
in
We
the
have so
amount of
many
ways.
things, all the things. But I could go back to the initial question here, Megan.
Yeah, yeah.
So after I had the reoccurrence after having birth, giving birth with Epic, I ended up going through a divorce with his father, and it was really traumatic. I definitely had a part in that. I'm not saying I did not, but it was nonetheless, I just didn't.
Postpartum is tough, and
Yeah,
we don't talk about it enough. Thankfully, that's starting to be talked about more. Yeah, it sounds like you really lost yourself for there.
yeah. I was like, I have this issue with these pills and I need help. And that was like one of those points where I did ask for help, but we were just too far gone. I had done a lot of damage. I had done a lot of like going to work in a show and not coming home to the next day. Not because I was cheating on you, but because I literally got lost in my car looking for an Adderall. Like, you know what I mean? Like, done a lot
Hmm.
of damage, lost a lot of trust. So fast forward that scarcity that followed after the divorce, regardless of who that, where that came from, the scarcity led me down a very dark path where I, for the first time, ended up putting myself in a really scary situation. And I advocate a lot for sex workers now, and I advocate a lot for sex trafficking because of my lived experience. And during that period, I put myself on a seeking arrangements website to find a sugar daddy, and that led me into human trafficking. And we could get into that, but it might take us another couple hours.
Well, and I think it's important, like, for us to touch base that a website that you linked to, how did you learn about that website and what did this website lead you down? Because I think it's important that we do know that it is this simple,
Mhm.
unfortunately, to get caught up in human trafficking.
So I had a gig here in Vegas and I had someone staying with me for the show because the gig was a couple days. It's for a company that actually throws a lot of like massive events here in Las Vegas. I'm sure you've heard of them. But so I had someone crashing with me for the show and she had purses and all these things. And I was like, listen, I know that you're a struggling artist like me. So like, what's going on? Like, what are you
Mhm.
doing? And that was always my thing. You're doing something. I want to know what it is and I want to do it too. And that's what got me in trouble my entire life. It was like very much a reoccurring thing from the first time I tried methamphetamines till, you know what I mean?
Yeah, like that could be such a beautiful trait to have. What are you doing? And I want to get there. Yes, okay.
Cool, we're gonna do methane.
We're
Yeah,
going
but
to
it's a double-edged sword. It's also gotten me into some really cool rooms with some really cool people. I'm very,
Right.
very determined, very stubborn. When I want something, like we're figuring it out, period. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
And so some of those impulses took you down a
Hmm.
very dangerous path
Yeah.
where thinking definitely being in a room with people who are achieving big things. I mean, that could be such a beautiful thing. So yeah, you're like, okay, where are you getting all these purses, girl?
Yeah, like, "What's going on, girl?" So she shows me the website, I sign up, I have no idea what I'm doing. I also wanna take a moment to really be transparent, like, there's a lot of sex workers out there that are good at what they do, and they enjoy it, and there's nothing wrong with it, and, like, I support them
Yes.
fully. Same with people that use drugs, and you mentioned that some people, like, they don't wake up and they're like, "I'm gonna choose to do heroin today." I mean this in the most respectful way, like, there are that group of people that can be like, "This weekend, I'm gonna do heroin, and, like, I'm gonna do it safely," and, like, we support them, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's and you said such a beautiful differentiation of what I said is, you know, of course, if you have that control to be
Mhm.
able, but I think what at times the stigma says, well, that person chose to wake up and say, I want to try heroin, and then in turn, fuck up my life.
Yeah,
That,
yeah, yeah.
right, like that wasn't the goal for that. But unfortunately, it's understanding what that looks like and the safety way rounds
Exactly, and
around that.
having the
Yes.
education and the tools and the fentanyl test strips and the everything else that comes with supporting people that use drugs. But yes,
That's such a beautiful thing to say, and there is that the ways of doing that, and so we'll
we'll
talk
discuss.
about that too for sure.
Okay, so I signed up for this website, seeking arrangements. I have no idea what I'm doing. Like,
Yeah,
was just winging it, and the first
want some
person.
bags.
Yeah, yeah, I want some bags, girl.
Yeah,
All the above. So the first person that hits, I'm involved. That escalates to a talking relationship through the app. That escalates in that person coming to visit periodically and me meeting with them. That escalates into that person telling me, hey, I will put money in your account and pay all your bills if you quit dancing. Now, mind you, at this point, the heroin had become so intense that I was losing gigs. This was a point where my face looked like paper mache because I was trying to pack foundation on over wounds. You know what I mean? Like, so I was like, okay, cool. Like, yeah, I'm
yeah,
into that. Again, I was dealing with a lot of pain and unresolved consequences of the divorce that, like, I again felt it was always me waiting for someone to come and save me. Like, if I get so bad that I'm gonna die, so and so is gonna come back and save me. And it got to a point where I had to save myself. And that's what really pulled me out of it was I was like, nobody is coming. Like, your mom is not
Yeah.
coming. Your dad is not coming. Your partner's not coming. Like, Teresa, you're going to die. And it's going to happen. Nobody's going to be there. And you've tested it and you've tested it and you've tested it and nobody showed up. So like, show up for yourself. You know what I mean?
So you realized that you had to make an active decision.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So nonetheless, that turns into with the sugar daddy trafficking situation, that turns into me visiting them in Georgia repetitively, them clearly knowing I have a substance use problem. I mean, I couldn't hide it from anybody at that time. Like it was very apparent that I mean, like you walked in my house and there was like tinfoil on my counter. Like I had light bulbs with things in it. You know what I mean? Like it was that
And
far.
I would venture to say, and you don't have to give details to this, but I would venture to say at this point, Epic wasn't able to be with you.
So I had messed that up royally. There was a time where not my fondest moment, my partner or my ex at the time showed up to pick up Epic and I had a bag of tinfoil sitting on my counter that I didn't even know was there. And he saw it and he was like, bye, and I was like,
Mm.
oh God. And like watching my kid walk down the stairs, like my ex-husband holding him in my kid's face as he walked down the stairs away from me. Like I will never, ever forget that moment. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so, yeah, like at that point, I was like, all right, well, I've messed this up so bad again. Like, I have nothing. Like, what's the point in continuing, And one time I go to visit my sugar daddy in Georgia and I was waiting for $3,000 of heroin to be delivered to me at the airport. Nonetheless, it never comes. I show up there after missing Delta flight after Delta flight. Finally, he's getting mad. I'm like, I got to get on the plane. So I'm in between two people in the middle seat of the plane, jumping and jiving and going through RLS and all the terrible withdrawal symptoms. I show up and I'm like, I have a dependency to heroin and I need help. Thinking I could
Yeah.
die.
And tell those listening, what is RLS and what does that look like on those withdrawal
Restless
symptoms?
restless leg syndrome. I would say out of all the opioid withdrawal symptoms, I could handle the sweaty, I could handle the body aches, I could handle the nose and the sneezing but the RLS is like having an electric wire run through your spine and through your legs. And like it'll zap and you'll just jump. And I would just scream. I would get through day 2 of not using opioids. And it was the RLS that got me every time. I would sit in the bathtub, in the hot bathtub and just cry. But that was always the thing that got me that I could not get through was that RLS. So yeah, it's painful. And people have it regardless of whether they're going through withdrawal or not, they can have RLS. It's terrible.
Yeah, it's terrible. And so at that point, were you able to get out of that situation and get yourself help? How long did it take to get out of that situation?
Well, when I showed up in Georgia with this individual, he actually wanted to help me and put me into rehab and put me into a state funded rehab in Georgia. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's so great. And I mean, this man was probably 71, 70. This was a few years ago. So I want to say I was probably what? This is 2017-ish. So I was much, much younger. Obviously, I'm not even 40 now. I'm 37 years old. So
Yeah.
yeah. So
We could
definitely
do the math, but we'll just keep
I
going.
don't really want to right now, but like someone
Yeah.
else could do the math for us.
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously a significant age difference, and it was very obvious. The situation I thought was very obvious, but this man visited me in rehab, brought me Pandora jewelry every time he would visit me. So by the time I left there, I had the earrings, the bracelet, every charm, the rings on every finger, and not one person in this rehab center asked me if I was okay. Asked me
Right.
what
What
was
is this?
on. Like, why is this old man showing up here with stacks of wine so that you can give them out for the vending machine? You're the queen of rehab. Like, what? Like, that's why I get these calls with people and I'm like really sitting there listening. And like, there's been situations where early on in my career where I was like a tech or a case manager and an older person would show up with flowers for the client. I'm like, what? I wish it just breaks my heart that not one, and I'm pretty sure it's because I was a private pay client and they weren't going to meddle in the fact that he was paying all this money, was state funded or not, for me. I didn't have
Yeah.
insurance in Georgia. You know what I mean? So he was
Right.
definitely paying something.
But those professionals out there, ask the questions,
Ask
please.
for questions. Like if there's red flags, please ask. If someone would have asked me if I was okay, I would have said no. I just didn't know how. And I did not know what next steps. It's scary when you don't know how to get out of something.
Yeah, you were literally alone at that point, it
Yeah.
sounded like.
This man had my dad wrapped around his finger. He would call him and say how great I'm doing and like all the things. And
Wow.
I ended up getting out of there. He has this very specific condo in the middle of nowhere. He's like, "You're gonna stay here and I'm gonna stay in my mansion." Mind you, this individual owned a really lucrative business. So he's like, "You're gonna stay in this condo. These are the expectations." I would say, "No, I don't care. Like, this is what you're gonna do." And mind you, this is me very newly abstinent, straight out of rehab, figuring out that I put myself in a really scary situation and asked to leave and go back home. And he's like, "Well, the condo that you had before you left that I was paying for, you don't have it anymore. I had you evicted. You've lost all your possessions." When I got out, he took my cell phone and he said it made sense. It all made sense to me at the time. Like, "Oh, your old contacts are in that phone. I got you this brand new iPhone, whatever. Here's this iPhone." I'm like, "Yes," like in the car on the way back after rehab. Well, he had the phone tapped. He was listening to every conversation. And the only reason I now know that's true is because he would play them back for me. He would play my own conversations back to me when I would ask to leave and things. And
It's
it was
terrifying.
yeah, and it's so crazy, like, it's so wild when you're in these situations and, like, after, like, you're like, "What happened to me?" Like, you really don't know, and it's, like, almost
Yeah.
like you're looking for validation. That's why I ended up getting really involved in these, sex worker programs and advocating for sex workers and human trafficking because I was also trying to learn about myself. I was like, "What
Yeah.
happened to me?" You know what I mean? I think that's normal for therapists too, right? Like, you usually get into this field because you're really curious about yourself or someone else that's close to you. So
Yeah, but you said something really important on that caveat is I mean, you said so many important things in this experience that you went through as well, is that in the moment, things definitely made sense to you
yeah.
until you got out of that situation, and I think that that's oftentimes something that I think is really important for outsiders to be mindful of when it comes to substance, when it comes to sex trafficking, when it comes to mental illness, self-harm, when it comes to suicidal ideation. Oftentimes, the thoughts during that time are much different than those looking in from the outside, and the thoughts in of themselves or the rationalization of what that situation is,
Mhm,
it just made sense for you until you got stepped out, or it sounds like eventually you were, like, putting those pieces together as it
mhm,
went, and
mhm.
then realizing,
Well,
I'm in trouble, right?
yeah, it turned into me asking to go home, and me having to walk up the hill to a payphone. They have payphones at this time, which is wild, but it was lucky for me, so I tried to make phone calls on the payphone because I knew my phone was recorded. The Durango that I got out of the divorce with my husband, he forged my signature and had a mechanical lien put on it, so I had no car, nothing to go back to. He said
Mm.
that he would hurt my kid, hurt my family. My dad was wrapped around his finger, and I'm, like, in this condo doing all the things that I don't wanna do just to have my basic needs met, and I start going through, like, the closet and the paperwork in the condo, and I'm finding, like, all these empty Pandora jewelry boxes. I mean, like, hundreds of them, and I'm like, "My god, like, what is
Gosh.
happening?" Like, he had kids that, like, the mom wasn't there anymore, and I was like, like, what is happening?" And so I ended up being able to get out of that situation because there was a girl that I had written her phone number down in a notebook from treatment, and I ended up she convinced me that she was gonna pick me up in the middle of the night from this condo when I let her, and that's eventually how I got out of that situation.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, very interesting, and
Thank you for sharing that story so much, and it's just I mean, this is how fast the all of this stuff can happen
mhm,
and how quickly the rationalization of whatever, right? I'm sure we could talk again for 6 years over how these patterns start to happen, and so as you get out of these lived experiences, you've mentioned many times that although you weren't sure at the time, but you found purpose every step of the way, one way or another, whether it be in your dancing and the music, and then let's talk about this bigger purpose that now fills you just as much and even the sensational way that you're dancing and the show is now you're giving in such a bigger way. You're in advocacy in a huge way. Tell us what that looks like and what
yeah.
you're up to these days.
Well, first, I want to say I have a lot of really cool friends that do a lot of really cool things, and they open a lot of doors for me. So, any of the work that I do is, a follow up of people before me that have done the work. Especially even in the harm reduction community, because of the overdoses, because of Casey, because of me wishing I had overdose education during that time and the people that followed that has passed since his death that are close to me. That is a lot of the motivation for me educating the community on overdose prevention, me putting the Narcan vending machines in facilities like Virtues, Outpatient. But that work is possible because there were so many people before me that like busted down these doors and had these
Yeah.
hard conversations. And now I'm continuing to try to like do the work for the next generation. But it definitely feels like in this climate, we're starting to backtrack both financially and stigma wise. But yeah, so a lot of my passion is because I'm trying to make it make sense, like make the pain make sense. And I think that that's probably one of the most healthy ways of healing is trying to find purpose. And I think our best advocates and people in the community usually have these really intense stories, and there's people that have stories beyond even my comprehension. And you know what I mean? And it
Right.
just it fuels the desire to help the next person. And you can't prevent people from going through pain, but you can make the bounce back quicker. You can do your best to prevent them from going through having their loved one buried 6 feet under in front of them. You know what I mean? Like there are
Yeah.
things that we can do.
And you said something earlier that ties into this is that, through that pain, you're finding that purpose. But you've walked these paths that ended up leading you to getting your own help.
Mhm.
And why would you say, for those listening, why would you say that it's so important that if it is fueling you to help others because you've been through the pain and you want to make sure? I mean, again, we could talk about a huge list of why all of these steps that you're taking is your purpose. And it's so beautiful. But why was you getting healing and now understanding some of these parts about yourself? Why was that so important for you to be in the space that you're in now?
I think after I saw the things that I saw, I couldn't go back to like, it's hard for me to relate, Megan, with people that like their concern is their nails or they're like going shopping. And like, as much as I love that people enjoy things about their life, I think once you see certain things and you go through certain experiences, you realize what's important, at least to you in your world, in your perspective. And like, I would much rather be spending my Saturday like being there for someone, especially with my son Epic, which we didn't really get into it, but like I eventually ended up becoming um a better human and abstinent from the substances in order to be with Epic, and to get Epic back and going through that process of the court. And
Yeah, and so you said now that Epic is back with you and you are doing such big things. You did that work so that you can show up for the people who did just want to talk about their nails.
yeah. Yeah. Like, and I love that. I love that. Like, listen, I have a lot of friends in my life and people in my life, and like they thoroughly enjoy like these little things, like these little moments. And I almost envy them because I still, and it might just be part of me that still needs to heal or like more work that I have to do. But it's like for me, if it's not big, if I'm not doing something big, it's just like it's kind of redundant for me.
Mm,
Like, I get it, like, listen, I got my nails done, girl. Like, I understand, I
yeah.
want you to enjoy your life, but I think that, at least for me, going back to being an entertainer and making it about me again and my photo shoots and staying relevant and, all the things that come with show business, I couldn't go back to that after going through what I went through. It didn't hold the weight that it used to for me?
Yeah. And so if you would say the biggest thing of getting that help and healing, although it's an ongoing journey, right? Like when we
Yeah.
have big life experiences, healing is ongoing and parts of us want to show up in different ways. So what would you say it are you immensely grateful for when it comes to your healing journey thus far?
Honestly, like, I'm grateful for the pain. I'm grateful for the experiences. Like, I love who I am now, and I wouldn't change a thing. I wish that the world, was all candy and rainbows and all the things, but I think that that wouldn't make it very interesting,
I
if
agree.
wasn't. And I
Yeah.
definitely have a huge contrast between what my life used to be and what it is today. And just being grateful for having food in the fridge and, the education that I get to have right now and the nonprofit work that I'm doing and the friends that I have. More importantly, like I have such an amazing community around me, Rob, Jamie, like I can name so many people, but like that
Yeah,
I,
so and
Good
That's an
human.
important part, yeah, that we didn't touch base on is how important to have community around you through that healing journey, right? Like, you have an incredible amount of support around you and badass people.
Badass people, man. Like,
Yeah.
will, like, go to the trenches with me. I'm like, "Hey, like, we have this idea, let's do it." Like, there's no
Yes.
fear because when people like us, like, people that I'm surrounded by have gone through the things that they've gone through, there's, like, not a fear anymore of, like, what
And
if
this is in a different way of what you were talking about freedom
Yeah.
over there, right?
Yeah, 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 exactly. Wow, look at this, Megan. We're having epiphanies. But yeah, it's like we've seen so many things and we've been through hell and like, bring it on. We're gonna do it too,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, and it's not there's I often say, as cliche as it is, but you can't do these journeys alone by yourself, and there's no need to. And there is people, even in cities like Las Vegas, where we think it's this transient place, we have some amazing humans doing some amazing badass things, and you are one of those amazing humans. And I will make sure to link all of the things that we talked about today, how to get support through Virtue Recovery, and everything that Virtue is out there doing. I mean, they're a great resource in our community. And they're not even just in our community. I think they have quite a
Mhm.
few
Yeah,
spots, correct?
they're in Texas, Oregon,
Mm-hmm.
Nevada, obviously, Arizona. Yeah, they have a lot of facilities and they do really good work. I mean, it was interesting for me because I'm so used to the nonprofit space and like I lead YPR out here and like I'm very into like boots on the ground that when I got into the for profit, I was like, but I can really stand behind this company. Like they have really good people that work in these facilities. Their missions or visions or values align with mine. And,
That's
like
so
we were
important.
yeah, we were talking before I think we started recording, like, I'm very much in the harm reduction community, so for me, it's about radical autonomy, like, if you decide, like, you're gonna use drugs, okay, that's what you want, I'm gonna help you do that safely, and I know, like, it's mixed reviews, but that's where I'm at, and that's what I believe in. Like, if you need fentanyl test strips, if you need Narcan, like, that's like, I'm
Well, it's
gonna
important that we meet people where they are. If
Yeah,
we try to push them too far in one direction, it's not going to work.
right, right.
And so meeting people where they are and you're out there doing the work. YPR is Young People Recovery,
Mhm.
and that is a non for profit. Tell us a little snippet as we wrap this up about YPR.
So YPR is an RCO, so it's like a wraparound service. They do all kinds of cool things. We do pro-social events. A lot of recovery, especially for our youth, is continuing to like, what is fun? What does fun look like where I can go out with my friends and not need the alcohol? Like, so we help support that with our initiatives. It's a lot of Narcan distribution, harm reduction efforts, all recovery meetings. So it's not just one pathway, which I'm huge, huge, huge advocate for multiple pathways. Like it's
Mhm.
never a one size fits all. What works for
Right.
that person is not always going to work for the next person. So options is imperative. It's crucial.
Yeah, and having resources like Young People Recovery and Virtue. I mean, we're starting to get younger and younger because we realize that it's not easy to support our youth, but there is resources out there for, any parents looking, any kiddos. If anybody stumbles upon this, that they're like, I want to get this support and the help, you're not alone, and everything will be linked in there. I want to wrap this up with, you know, I have like 50 more questions, but we will wrap this up today.
Okay. We'll have to do this again, Megan. We'll have to do a round.
Yes, we'll have to have a part two, y'all. It will be coming. First, before I ask my question, when you were able to get to that space to bring Epic back into your home, what would you say to those parents that have had that, hardship and they're coming back to build that connection?
That's a really good one. It's a good question. It may feel like what you can offer isn't enough, but you're probably lying to yourself. Like, if it's you, usually what your kid needs is you. And then the
Yeah.
materialistic things, the house, the having his own room. Listen, if he's got to sleep on the couch next to you or sleep in your bed, like, you do what it takes. Your kid just wants to be with you, right? And
Yeah.
please don't ever think that you're not enough just because you had an issue or a situation in your life where you couldn't provide what you thought he needed or she needed. Like, your love is, they just want their mom or their dad. You know what I mean? Just be
Yeah.
the best person you can. And with me and Epic, like, our relationship is so transparent. For example, 2 days ago, he was like, he saw Narcan because I was loading a vending machine for Virtue and all the Narcan was in my living room. He's like, what is that? I said, do you want to learn how to administer? And he said, yeah. And he goes and gets a stuffed animal and he learns how to do, call 911, do rescue breaths, administer the Narcan. I mean, just having that transparent, authentic relationship with your kid. And Epic knows all the things. He knows my mistakes, and more importantly, he knows how I bounced back. And I think now he's going to have, that resilience to know that, like, even his mom made mistakes. You can always figure it out if you try.
Yeah, yeah. And, do that work for yourself. For those listening, because we've mentioned Narcan a few times, give us a snippet of what Narcan is and why it's so important that we're fighting to get those out into the hands of those that need it.
Yeah, absolutely. So Narcan is an opioid reversal medication. It knocks off the receptor in your brain that is usually filled by the narcotic, right? So it does work on opioids. But with that being said, in the cocaine supply, in the illicit drug supply, there is a lot of fentanyl being tested. So even if somebody, as you know, is a stimulant user and they having symptoms or signs of an overdose, the pale skin, the blue lips, the clammy, the death rattle, you can administer that Narcan. It's a nasal pump. So it's very easy to do. You do not have to restrict the other side of the nose. You see someone who's unresponsive, you can do a pain cue, look for signs of the overdose, have somebody calling 911 because the Narcan only lasts up to about 30 minutes, and then you can have that person an active overdose again. Have someone call 911. Start rescue breathing, also very important. Administer the Narcan on one side of the nose. Then you wait 2 or 3 minutes. If they're not responsive, you can administer a second dose. Narcan is amazing. It should be free everywhere. I know that you can buy it for $50 for 2 doses in things like CVS and Walgreens. However, this is like Virtue, Shine-A-Light, the Center. We will give free Narcan and free drug testing strips for xylazine, fentanyl. You do not have to pay for them. Please don't pay for them. If you can't pay for them, that's totally fine. Come see one of us. I will link my email as well, Megan, with you. So that way, if someone just needs me to deliver it, I can absolutely do that. I will come meet you where you're at, whether that's on the side of the road or anywhere else, and bring you Narcan for free.
Amazing. Thank you for all of that information and for all that you're doing, because it's not easy right now to get those free products into everybody's hands, but they're there because amazing humans are out there fighting for these products to be free. Thank you again for all that you're doing in our community. Are just such a light in so many people's lives, and being able to do what you do, walk the path that you did, and do the healing that you've done to show up for those. I just want to say thank you again. And I hope you come back and join us and we continue this conversation.
It's so much fun. There's so much more to discuss. So I will be back.
There is. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope you gained what you needed to hear today. Healing isn't about erasing the past. It's about the strength of moving forward. If today's episode resonated with you, take a moment to share it. Share it with someone you love, because when we share with love, we help to break the stigma together. If you want to connect with me and learn more about what we're doing over at Mental Summit to break these stigmas, please connect with me over at mymentalsummit.com. Keep showing up, keep growing, keep going together, and remember, you're not alone in this.